Good afternoon, everyone. Carahsoft Technology would like to welcome you to our Otava webinar. Today, we are lucky enough to have Jim Lowry, Senior Systems Engineer for Veeam, and Sydney Diedrich, Director of Marketing for Otava, joining us today. Jim, I would like to hand the floor over to you.
Awesome, great. Looking forward to working with you guys. As I was told, my name is Jim Lowry. I work for Veeam Software and partner with Otava regularly. So looking forward to sharing some content with you guys, hopefully make things better for you and easily understood. And as we're waiting for the Q&A session towards the end, by all means, write down some questions or even send them into the Q&A chat functions in Zoom so we can have those questions in memory for you when we get to that stage. Sydney?
Thanks, Jim. And this is Sydney Diedrich, the Director of Marketing for Otava. We've got a great lineup for you today. I'll pass it over to Jim to kick us off.
Okay, so we will get the share screen here. Sorry, I think I might, there we go. Is that where my buttons are working now? Okay, cool. Sorry about that. So we'll start with what is ransomware and why is this important? Why is it so critical to understand and what are we doing with it and why it's such a big deal? So for most of you, I'm sure you're aware of this already, but malicious software or malware is one of the ways that ransomware is used. Sorry, is that so ransomware will restrict access to computers, to data, until you are either paying for it to get your stuff back, or you delete it, or you get closed. So all of that happens via ransomware methods, trying to get that software into your environment behind your firewalls, and then using advanced encryption algorithms to go through and encrypt everything that they possibly can get access to. So it's a very, very frustrating time to be if you've ever been part of a ransomware attack. Okay. Next slide. I'm having problems with getting control. I apologize, Sydney. For some reason, it's not clicking the slides. So what are the different ways that we can get ransomware? Many of these are old and have been around in IT for a long time with viruses, but some of these are very, very new. And it's important to understand that as well. So Trojans, this is a classic example of somebody downloads a piece of software or opens a page, an email attachment, or anything along those lines that hidden underneath that is able to disseminate from there and infect a system, spread, and all these information spreads become accessible through the Trojan horse mechanism, right? Social engineering is a little bit more of a people approach. Can I take advantage of somebody in a situation that has access to critical data and maybe manipulate them or trick them into providing some of that information to somebody trying to hack and get access to the system? Removable media. I found this one really interesting. There's a good stat on this where Google did some time which is a removable USB drive, that it's one of the most common vectors of ransomware infection because it's so easy to do. And they can take advantage of human curiosity. So Google did a really interesting study, and I want to make sure I get the right number for that. That was, I believe, 49% of, make sure I have that. Yeah, 49% of people who were being tested with dummy ransomware attacks with a USB drive would find it. So for the example, what they're saying, when you go out walking in a park someday, or you're on a desk at an office, somebody has left a USB drive behind, and you're not quite sure who it is, what it belong to, how it got there. So one of the things that people will do is put that USB drive into their laptop or their desktop and immediately get infected with the virus. And that is human curiosity is getting taken advantage at that point. We think it's something simple and benign, but underneath that, we have some attack vectors and Trojan horse software and encryption software And that's where Google with that test of just leaving dummy USB drives around, 49% of the people would plug it in and get infected. So that's astounding. Something that you really heavy number usage for that. So malvertising, is it malware putting in between or about in the actual web advertisements that you would see on a website? So a Facebook ad could have a virus stuck underneath it that you're not aware of, or they'll use phishing attacks to do something similar with that with malvertising. So you can go in and kick on something that you're normally using, but it looks and feels identical, but like the phishing scam says, it's not what you think it is. It's always a good idea to make sure you look at the URL destination before clicking anything. So some of the newer ones are kind of interesting for me are social media and MSS, simple message systems, right? So true story. Last week, my wife got a text message, and I got a text message from somebody that actually used the name of one of our contacts in our phone and said, hey, I forgot to give you this amount of money. Can you please come over here and help that to me? And that was the first time my wife had ever received a ransomware attack vector through a text message. So it was really interesting. I immediately told her, don't open that, don't do it. This is malware. It's a big deal. But they get really sneaky too. So phishing scams are not just in email anymore. Phishing is absolutely happening with cell phone data, text messages, chat programs. So you want to make sure, and they're really good at masking it too. Like you'll get, hey, this is Citibank. I just saw an unauthorized deposit from your account with us. Please click this link to go figure out what's going on. And then it forces you to log in through a phishing scam web page. And now they have all your access. So it's a very sophisticated and very, very powerful way to get into somebody's system and trick them. The other options here, ransomware as a service. People will go out and buy different software packages for ransomware, and on the dark web, they're easy to find, and then they will use that to go encrypt other people, combine the resources gained from that together, and start really getting very aggressive and spread throughout. Supply chain attacks are actually going to the supply chains physically of like a Walmart or a Target, or boats coming from overseas with goods on them, trying to disrupt the ransomware there, and with ransomware, the supply chain. So now not only do they have access to your data, now they can control what you can do with your assets. And then mail service attacks, very similar to your typical phishing scheme using some sort of email mechanism. So go to the next slide. Thank you. So right here, we're going to walk through just a very simple example to show what are the different ways that a mail service attack would work. And conceptually, the SMS messaging or text messaging would be very similar to this as well. It's just using a different piece of software to attack, in this case, email, but the principles are very sound. So as my wife and I got last week, hey, we have this new feature. It looked like it came from somebody we know in our contacts list, and they need us to go do something. Or I've got a malvertising software that came to you in an email. Hey, please download this. I am I'm a worker at Citibank, and somebody's just taken some of your money. Please log in there and go click on this button to go see what's going on. So let's go ahead, next slide for me. Awesome. So in this case, you'll see here the lovely Kevin Mitnick, who I think has the coolest last name in history, decided that we are going to show an example of a phishing scheme here. And you can see the URL there that's pointing, click in the following link. This looks very, very good. It's got the Microsoft logo. It's got addressing, the grammar in English is written really well. So it doesn't look or feel off first glance as something that would be a phishing scam. Well, if you were to click on that following link, it would take you right over to where they want you to go. And at that point, we try to go through some way to get some of your data and infect behind your firewall. So always make sure that you hover over that following link button and make sure that it's actually going where it's supposed to. Next slide for me, please. Thank you. All right. So one of the ways that once you log in, we're going to try to use some of the token credentials that you've stored and try to copy some of those usernames and passwords down and try to manipulate access in other ways. Next slide, please. So this is really important with one of the pop-ups that we get. When we have things turned on so that you can get a learning when you're going to a suspicious looking website, it's always important to understand, or even if it's a legitimate website, that you're going to, always make sure to understand exactly what they're asking for. They want your data at any time. They're going to use your credentials to sign in automatically if you store your password somewhere, it just makes it more easy to log in, save you a couple of frustration of trying to memorize all your passwords. But they're also going to be able to read your contacts, you read your calendar, read your email, and write email, all on your behalf, looking like it's just from you. So definitely make sure that you understand where those are going. And you see this all the time with something like Facebook. If you go add and want to follow something interesting or a technology or a favorite actor or toy or whatever, they'll see you. Facebook will pop up. They want access to all of these things. Are you okay with them seeing it? They will be able to see your Facebook contact list if you say yes. So it's important to understand what that entails. Next slide, please. And so malware is one of the ways that would come behind and start encrypting things. And malware doesn't always work immediately either. It's again, it wants to sprawl and crawl all around that it can. So can it get access to your Hyper-V or vSphere servers or vCenter and start looking through all the attached machines, IP address, names? Can it find files? With a backup vendor, are you able to get to the actual backup copies so that they can't restore those? And what do they do with them? And encrypt the backup copies too, or even go through a delete of the backup copies. So that will happen. But they can let things sprawl and sit and do a network crawl for months before that time bomb goes off. So it's trying to infect as much as possible with the malware. Next slide, please. This is a really interesting slide because you can see our friend, the lovely hacker, Kevin Mitnick, has infected us with malware by a link that we clicked. And now if you look at the email in the inbox, you'll see the one that's highlighted, but all of the others as well, except for the very top one, are now fully encrypted. It's been infected with something, and you can see that any of the data that's part of the body of that email has been hashed. And so you can't read it anymore. You're reading the encryption hash, and it's not human readable. You have no idea what's there. So you go to the next slide, please. And one more. So go ahead and do the next slide as well. Thank you. So the last one, talking about Bitcoins or form of payment. This is an example of showing what that form of payment request could look like. So if you remember from the last slide, I said all of those emails were infected and encrypted except for the very top one. And that's because the very top one is the ransom note. They want you to be able to read that. So you'll see the threat here of, hey, I now have access to all your stuff. I'm the only one with the encryption key. Here's what I want. And Bitcoin or any other type of cryptocurrency is a great way for them to get paid because it's untraceable. Just by the nature of how blockchains interact and how they work, it is completely anonymous. And there's nothing you can do to really discover that with any accuracy at all. Go ahead, hit the next slide for me. So these are another couple of good things, or not good things, but good examples of what different attack vectors look like. So you can see the top left, that email, that text message, hey, you've got new COVID-19 regulations. There's one, and this was actually a very big deal for us where I live in California, because the county I live in does send us these types of text messages and they're legitimate. So it was very easy for people to spoof that and make it look like I need to go click in on that particular text message that came from our local government. And another option here to the right of that, your Flash player is out of date. You need to go download the newest Flash player version and from Adobe and update everything. And then it looks legitimate as a pop-up. When they go click on that, yes, please go update or download it. But in reality, it was another phishing scam and they've been able to infect your systems. Below that to the right, you can see when you actually start to open the file that you just downloaded, you can look to see the size of it, but look where it came from as well. That doesn't match what you would expect from a Flash download. It's not coming from Adobe, not even in the same domain. So it's and if you look at the file name too, the file name is very different from what you would expect from the regular naming convention that Adobe Flash would have. To the left of that, so we'll go to the two others on the bottom. You can see something from an email that came from the New York Times or on Twitter or on social media, excuse me. That one's on social media. You can see, click this link, it's a virus. Or if you get something that says we have a virus, you don't need to worry about it, we're okay. We're trying to eliminate it now. So it could be a legitimate reply from New York Times saying that in this instance, but it could also be something that they're spoofing and saying, you don't need to worry about that. Even if your computer got infected, you're still okay. Don't worry about it. We'll take care of it in the background. And I don't know about you, but I don't want the New York Times making security decisions for me. So finally, on the last one, this is a less sophisticated version of what happened to my wife and I last week. You can see, hey, you just had this one thing that came to you. It's a free gift now. You're one of these random winners. You're going to get a Walmart gift card. Just click on this link. And that's a tiny URL. So you want to hover over that and see, what is this thing? And if my name was Timothy at the top of that, why would it say Timoth? You can see it sometimes with the grammar in these messages is also not correct when you read through it. So you could tell that it was something done via something like Google Translate that doesn't quite understand nuance between your personal language that you're using. Next slide, please. All right, so Sydney, are you?
All right, so
you're good to go?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so we mentioned this in the beginning, but one thing to note is that ransomware and cybercrime and hackers, they don't discriminate based on industry. They don't discriminate based on line of business. They are really looking to capitalize on uncertainty and lack of understanding and vulnerabilities in general. And really what this boils down to is, for the public sector specifically, there's about $1.8 million, $1.08 million in average that a data breach will cost at any given time. There's a lot of different examples that we'll go over on the next couple slides of companies that have experienced this sort of loss and this sort of attack. But we know in general that about 43% of breaches in the public sector are caused by malicious attacks. And what does that mean? What are the top type of attack methods that they see in the public sector? And here you have on the far right, about 19% are compromised credentials. So that really just comes down to passwords that are people using the same password over and over, or passwords that aren't very secure, passwords that are your birth date, that are just really easy for a hacker to break. And I'm sure that many of us are guilty of it, maybe not all of us. There's a lot of people who are very confident about what sort of passwords they use out there, but it's easy to fall into bad habits with regards to passwords specifically, and credentials and maintenance of those sort of things. And then the other large attack method is through hyperscale cloud misconfiguration. So a lot of people choose to go with a hyperscaler because of, oh, it's point and click, it's very easy to onboard. But really, at the end of the day, there are some nuances and complications that can arise from configuration of those different deployments and not knowing what you're doing. So just making sure that you have the right people in the right roles and the right credentials and admin access to different systems controlling your business can be a big help in indicating whether or not you would have a vulnerability to an attack like this.
So Real quick,
As I
Sadie.
mentioned, oh yeah, go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, so back to the previous slide real quick. So my father was a counterintelligence officer for the Navy for 27 years, but he also worked as a civilian doing that kind of stuff for various federal agencies. And what was interesting is that he was specifically looking after different pieces of attack vectors. But what he found was that most people are not intentionally trying to maliciously invite something. A lot of it comes from accidental clicks on the stuff you'd see previously. But it was also interesting about how often insiders are involved with the malicious attack. So they discovered dozens and dozens, my father did, at the federal agency that he was working for as security. But a lot of foreign nationals who would come here for heavy scientific degrees and doctorates would stay here, understanding that they're going to help steal patents, for example, medical patents at the FDA, or various data information, data mining. They were actually there as plants long-term for foreign governments. And it was amazing to see just how many of them existed, even within the same business or the same organization, all stealing patents. And you can see that very easily with China, where China has, and Russia as well, have been notorious for taking medical patents and disseminating them out there where a US patent law doesn't apply. So always make sure to look at insider stuff as well.
Yes, absolutely. Great point. In fact, speaking of Russia, we know that the White House actually issued a fact sheet with regards to cyber attacks and cyber threat, urging companies to ensure that they were protected proactively from any sort of threat and vulnerability, which included investing in backup and disaster recovery solutions and cybersecurity solutions and cloud solutions that were compliant and secure. So not only is this affecting organizations across the United States, it's really affecting organizations across the globe. And the White House has put a spotlight on that. We see here locally, we have several companies in the public sector that have come under fire in recent months, including Aurora Water, the Colonial Pipeline Company, Illuminate Education, and SolarWinds, just some of the high profile attacks that companies have faced that have compromised hundreds of thousands of records and data and really put them in a position where they have to make a decision about the continuity of their business. How are they going to recover? How are they going to get back online? How are they going to serve their clients in a way that doesn't compromise the integrity of their data, but also doesn't really damage their reputation? And so again, a lot of these companies are kind of caught without something in place to get back online quickly and recover quickly, or avoid those compromising situations. And really what this boils down to, when we talk about the Colonial Pipeline, it resulted in an $18 million ransom that they ultimately paid in order to get back online, which doesn't include the millions more in cybersecurity and really just repentance, if there's a word that I'm missing there, mitigation and just getting back online, and all of the different damages and issues that they had to overcome are not even accounted for in that ransom fee, right? Illuminate Education, additionally, there was over 820,000 records that were exposed during their breach and attack. And even right now, I have actually alerts on in my email for any sort of ransomware attacks that are going on. And we know that the public schools of Chicago are currently under fire with a ransomware attack. There's about 500,000 student records that have been compromised and 60,000 employee records. And this attack has been traced back to December and is still affecting them today. So it's something that's very prevalent out there, not only in the public sector industry, but again, it doesn't discriminate depending on if you're, healthcare, financial services, et cetera. If you have data that's valuable, or even data that you feel wouldn't be valuable, might be valuable to a hacker in any case. Or Jim, did you have anything you wanted to add to those?
No, covered it well. Thank you.
Okay.
So there's a few things that we consider now, and all of these decisions need to be considered and planned for well in advance, so that you don't have to react when you do get attacked. Everybody will eventually get hit with ransomware. It's just a matter of if and when, but you can still make things harder, so you're less likely to have any impact with it. But you're left with only a few decisions. And again, it's always better to have an action plan created and tested and validated before you ever get a chance to actually have to put it in practice for real life. So you have these three options are to recover the data. Essentially, you pay your ransom and then hope that they actually give it back to you because they still have control over it. You give up, right? Just say, okay, fine, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. I wanted to retire anyway. That's an unfortunate occurrence. It's happened more often than I think we would care to admit or appreciate. That people just get out of business altogether. And then, or the final option would be to execute whatever ransomware protection strategies and security practices that you have in place and have already tested. And that execution plan is obviously the best thing to do. Giving up doesn't solve the problem for you. Paying the ransom doesn't guarantee anything. It doesn't necessarily remove the threat of them re-encrypting it all either. They could still easily have access to it until you patch that breach that they accessed. I think I can control. All right, I got the slides working. So like I mentioned, paying the ransom and giving up are not always the right thing to do, and very rarely should they be used. The action plan options are much simpler. And to make sure you guys are aware, the US government has actually released some details on what they will fine and go after companies that actually pay the ransom. So there's definitely some legal concerns there as well. If you do pay the ransom, it's important to make sure that you've talked to your government agency reps to understand, and some lawyers to understand exactly what would happen with that as part of your discussion plan, right? Or your execution plan. You want to just make sure you're prepared for all contingencies. So we'll go through a few, and this is by no means a complete list. Few of the different protection tips that I've got. Strong passwords. Some of these are things we've heard for years, but that doesn't mean that they're not critical. So strong passwords, things that are easy for you to remember, but are hard for a computer to understand or a hacker to understand. So if don't use common words or common mistyping. So I have an example of what that could look like on the next slide. Yeah, but security prevention is the best way to approach it. So are your customers, are your students, employees, sister organizations, are they trained and understand the risks? Can they identify with any accuracy what's a phishing scam and what's not? Internally at Veeam, we actually get randomly tested for phishing attacks. We'll create a fake phishing attack. We'll send it to a text or an email or whatever that the company has, and then I need to make sure that I click it. So if I don't see it right and I click on the links inside there, a pop-up would pop up saying, hey, you just missed these signs in what was going on. But if I report it, say, hey, I think I'm getting a phishing scam here, what can we do with that? Then you get the other, hey, good job, you noticed it. This is just a test, nothing's going on. So there's great ways to kind of help your people understand things to do. Getting like a third-party threat analysis or overview of your infrastructure is always helpful. Somebody that could understand it. making sure that you have specific monitoring tools in place that would allow you to see any type of potential problem. For example, Veeam 1 is one of our nitty-gritty overview monitoring system, similar to a SolarWinds, right? And Otava has a very deep integration with us with that product. So one of the things that we've created out of a few other main reports is that if somebody's doing encryption on malware or ransomware encryption, your CPU utilization in that area will typically spike beyond normal parameters. So if you see sudden spike increases with software monitoring, then there's a good chance that something like that could be happening, or it could just be an abnormal day, but those alerts will at least get you the answer really quickly to go investigate it and tell you exactly where to go look for it. Insurance protection against liability and against loss is critical. Make sure you're using the Veeam, or I guess the industry standard, but we use it all the time, the 3-2-1-1 rule. Operate from a zero trust protection with domain credentials and domain access. And a couple of other things that pop up here are using either a worm deployment or immutability options. So the Veeam software can integrate with the S3 object API, not Amazon S3, which it does work with, but the API of S3 that Amazon created. We can do immutability on that. So immutability and which says this block and this object is now locked for whatever period of time I say to keep. So if I say keep it for 30 days, that object on your object storage that's flagged for immutability, those 30 days, it cannot be changed. Encryption will fail. And we have lots of different resources to explain that in detail, but it's a great way that is extremely cost effective to protect your data from encryption. Because if encryption would require it to rewrite the data, but it can't when it's immutable. Another option that's really used but often overlooked is using tape as air gap. So if you use tape arrays, you can use either worm, so write once, read many, which is, lock it down permanently, similar to immutability, but it's more at a hardware level. And with the tape device, you can air gap it. Air gap means there is no network connection between any of those two systems. So let's say it's a tape or a disk array that you're targeting. If you turn it on to run the job, as soon as those backup jobs have finished and been validated, you disconnect it from the infrastructure again, and now nobody can get to it. It's air gap, meaning I've created that separation there. And that is still the most powerful way to protect against ransomware is air gapping. There's just different ways to approach it. So, that's all based on a hardware level approach, but very, very powerful. So some things here to look at kind of with strong passwords. I'd mentioned a little bit about not using common words, but also don't substitute letters with common other characters that would look like it. So if you look at the word doorbell in this example, you can see I've replaced the 0 and E and L with E, or with 3 and 7, 7. So it kind of looks like it's still there, but it's still easier for people to be able to hack because it's a very common mechanism. So make sure that things are easy for you to remember, but that doesn't mean it has to be random characters. You could easily just use something like take a phrase from your favorite novel or movie quote and have each letter kind of at the first letter of each statement could become a mnemonic, so that you can see with that mnemonic what, use the force Luke. In my head, I'm writing out use the force Luke with each first level and then some other characters to do that. Those are very, very strong passwords that also make them very user friendly, and so you can memorize them and not have to store them somewhere else. And then make sure you're also adjusting passwords, especially if you think you've been attacked. It's good to redo passwords periodically. Okay. There we go. Oh, sorry. We talked multi-factor authentication is huge. This is, again, a very simple way to implement, but being able to have a password and then a one-time key to verify based on either thumbprint or face scan, or even just a simple code that gets texted or emailed to you. It's a great step to do. It's very rapidly becoming the only way that people will do encryption or authentication mechanisms. There's still a lot of legacy stuff out there too, and it works, but this is by far more secure and much more reliable. And it's the wave of the future of how we're doing it. So this is important with insurance, not only liability, but what's the risk to my business? How can I recover from this? If I get attacked and I don't trust my infrastructure anymore, can I use insurance to go get new components that were never attacked, and then move things around as appropriate? It gets very expensive, right? Especially in large data centers. So the insurance is important to have with that. I've mentioned the 3-2-1-1 rule. This is a critical thing for backup vendors like that you've been using here at Veeam. It pays to have a backup vendor who is paranoid, right? Because everything for us revolves around restores. If your restores aren't reliable or fast, we're doing something wrong. And that core principle is what drives all of our development and improvement at Veeam. So 3-2-1 rule, 3 different copies of data. So you got your production copy, a backup copy, and potentially a second backup copy offsite. So that's the 3, at least 3 copies of data. The 2 is different media types. So either a tape array and spinning disk, or I want to have object. I want to target a NAS device, or I want to do stuff in public cloud or in private cloud, having different media and different access points. But that way you're not locked into a specific hardware problem in case a disk drive becomes a vulnerability. So the first one copy of your data should always go offsite and be separated, so that in the event of a DR scenario, like the data center craters, or it's gotten hacked, you want to make sure that you have valid copies that you can use offsite somewhere. And that's something that Otava does perfectly when you work with them. They're one of the best in the business, bar none. And the next one, if you can, do offline, and that's the air gapping idea. We want to make sure that air gapping is there as much as is practical and reasonable, because it is still the best protection against a ransomware infection. If it's not on the network, it can't get encrypted. And then finally, the 0 there is verification. Make sure your backups are actually good. You don't want to have to go test a backup and verify the data is there in the middle of a ransomware attack. Again, using Veeam software, that's very easy for us to do. We always do a CRC check after any backup job is run or sent over a wire. But you can also use scripted and features that are built into our software, again, that Otava has set up, and it's perfect. Their tech team is brilliant, honestly. They're just fantastic education in this and understanding there. So you can set up a backup verification job. When Veeam parlance, we'll call that a sure backup or a sure replica. You can even do automated test failovers of single machines and entire data centers or application groups. And you can do all of that with the actual backup copies while production is online, and production data would never be altered by a backup copy. We won't even edit the backup copy data either. We're just using it there to boot up and make sure that I can actually execute my failover plan and that it would work. So rather than having to go do it all on your own, you can literally set this up to run in the background and email you a report with all the success or failure notes or concerns. Zero trust protection, meaning I don't care who's in my network, my router and my switch and or other switches that are even directly connected. I don't trust them because somebody in theory might be able to put something in between them. So, and passing through while they're reading the data blocks as they come across the wire. Right. So you want to make sure that everybody understands how things are set up using modern multi-factor authentication and other modern products or feature designs or policies for protecting assets in between each other, even on a LAN. We mentioned most of this already, a few other things, making sure your staff is trained and up to date on how to do things, both for your internal IT teams, so that they know what to do to resolve things, but also all of your employees to know what to look for, and being able to have a way to tell you if they've gotten suspicious of something. So like with our phishing email injection into our email client here at Veeam, I have a way of notifying the security team, hey, I think I had a problem, please go check this out. Or even telling them, hey, I know I clicked a button. I need you guys to help me get this done and move forward so we can make sure everything's protected. Having an incident response team is great, and that's exactly what your staff should be able to reach out to, but that would also include your IT team to make sure that they know what they're doing the moment it happens. Otava and Veeam work very well with ransomware cases, so that if somebody does get hit and encrypted, they can work with us and Otava and get things going as quickly as possible. It's also important to make sure you have, as I mentioned, third-party audit, or do some different analysis for looking at any open attack vectors. What are there? What needs to be closed down? What are some of the loopholes that I need to be aware of? And of course, make sure that you're keeping all of your security patches, at least you're up to date. Where possible, keep your software updated as well. Obviously, that is not always going to be 100% available. So you just have to be careful with that. Okay, I mean, not available, but you don't necessarily want to go to the brand new GA release of Windows 11 when it comes out. Maybe you want to go look at 2020 server for a little bit longer before determining you want to roll it out, right? So for how to recover, we kind of covered most of this. We have a 24/7 NOC dedicated specifically to ransomware that Otava and us will partner with to work on. Make sure that you have tested everything that in your recovery plan so that you know how to do it and you've got all those kinks ironed out already. And then make sure that you have an action plan documented that everybody could access and follow along. The more detail in that plan, the better. Okay, all right. So Sydney, I'll pass this back over to you to close up. And I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. That was some great information. I really appreciate you taking the time to go through it. To piggyback off what he was saying with regards to when it comes time to recover, you have options when you need to think about what data are you trying to back up, what data are you trying to protect, and how long can you go without that data. So Otava has made it really easy to make the decision for which solution is right for your business. We have business critical backup and disaster recovery, which takes into account what your recovery point objective is and what your recovery time objectives are, and understanding that if you need it to be closer to 0, you're going to want to be at the top of this triangle. If you have a little bit more flexibility in terms of your recovery point objective and how often you're doing those backups, we've moved down to business important, and then data centric and data vault, and so on and so forth. And you don't have to pick one or pick kind of settle on one for all of your data. What's really interesting about a backup and disaster recovery strategy and what Otava can help you build is something that's very custom to your business and supports different workloads in different ways. If you have employee information that you want to protect, but not necessarily recover right away, maybe a data vault backup is the right solution for that sort of that content. But maybe you have different proprietary records that are very critical and you can't survive without them, which would be more of a near zero recovery point. Our team will work with you to figure out what's the best solution for your business. And to take a quick step back, for those of you who may not be familiar with Otava or know who Otava is, Otava is actually a platinum partner of Veeam. We're a Veeam cloud and service provider specializing in backup and disaster recovery and really hybrid cloud solutions as a whole. And our solutions are backed by industry compliances. And we go through audits on a yearly basis to ensure that these are kept up to date. So we are actually one of the first managed service providers to get a HIPAA compliance certification, which is something that we are very proud of in our company and in our industry. We're also high trust compliant, PCI, DSS, SOC 1, 2, and 3, and ISO 27001 compliant as well. And we offer a full suite of cloud solutions and solutions that are tailored to fit your needs as a business. Again, we don't believe in cookie cutter solutions. We don't believe in 1-800 numbers. When you call Otava, you get a real person, which really is what sets us apart from the likes of our competitors, is that we are that one hand to shake partner that guides you through these digital transformations, hand in glove with the support that your business needs, especially in a time when resources are so scarce. We're helping lots of our clients right now navigate just having lack of skilled labor in their workforce. And we're getting a lot of requests to do more managed services and manage backup and manage DR and run tests with them and really be that hand to hold through this process for our clients that know that it's critical to their business, but don't necessarily know where to start. So if that's you, if that sounds familiar, a lot of public sector clients are coming to us to understand how they can proactively strengthen their data protection policies without breaking the bank. And there is a solution out there for everyone, and doesn't have to be an all or nothing sort of thing. We can work with you to figure out what's going to be right for your individual needs. And with that, I will pass it over to Jane. I think we have a few questions that came in through the Q&A. Jane, if you'd like to read those.
Yes, so one question was, what should my first steps be if we're just getting started with a data protection plan or solution?
Oh, that's
a great question. Again, I just kind of mentioned that a lot of clients come to us because they don't know where to start. And so for us, I would suggest your first step would be to reach out to Otava so we can understand what your needs are and what your process looks like. So we've got our contact information here up on the screen if you wanted to give us a call or reach out via email or just go to our website and fill out a form there. We'd be happy to help you and walk you through those steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And to add to that, and this is not me just trying to blow smoke, the Otava technical team has some of the smartest IT people I've ever worked with. Literally understand the data center top to bottom, from power grids to application deployment and backup copy and running. I mean, it's just, they're brilliant, and they are so good at customized things. In the moment where let's say you've gotten attacked, the first thing you would do, I know it's kind of slightly different question, but the first thing you've done once you've been attacked, immediately reach out to your support team at Otava, and they will be able to guide you through all that.
Last question was, which services or solutions does Otava offer that can help mitigate my organization's risk?
So all of them.
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, realistically, any data protection solution is going to be mitigating your risk. Being proactive in any way, shape, or form is better than not having a solution in place. It's like an insurance policy we talked about in the beginning, right? you wish you never need to use it, but you're sure glad you have it when you need it. So backup, disaster recovery, Microsoft Office 365 backup, which a lot of people don't think about, multi-factor authentication, those things that we talked about that are really proactive steps to help you prevent vulnerabilities in your environment so that malicious folks cannot penetrate. And if they do penetrate, then those solutions in place like backup and DR are so critical to ensure that you don't lose any of that data. And what's also really great about the Veeam solution is that you can get very granular with your restore. I'm not sure if Jim mentioned this, but you can isolate compromised files and restore only the ones that you know that are not infected, so that you're not reinfecting yourself with a ransomware virus.
Yeah, that's a great statement there, Sydney. I did not get that, but she's absolutely right. We can do anything you need in that regard to restore, even submit any type of attachment to an email. What's interesting and cool with the immutability feature that I was talking about earlier is even if you've had ransomware that had been on those backup copies, but they're now immutable and offsite, but it just hadn't manifested itself yet, it was still doing a network crawl, for example. Even with those viruses stored onto those immutable objects, I can still bring up that stuff in production, but I do not have to put it on the production network beforehand. You can use virus scanner software to go back and just remove everything before you present it. And you could also, if you already know what to do to go rectify or what's piece to delete or something like that, you can stage all of this with a staged restore, regardless of where the backup file sits. So you have a lot of flexibility to not only work well, but recover quickly. The immutable backup copy function that we have will, the moment any backup job is done running, full backup, synthetic or active full, or a incremental changes only backup file, the moment any one of those finishes processing, I can immediately make a copy that is immutable and store it offsite somewhere. And it's now 100% protected so that you can restore based off your most current backup. You don't have to go 3 months in arrears to go find a backup that works, right? You can do it with your most recent one. You can also use immutability for the local repositories with our Linux hardened repository function, which will do localized immutability among other security options. So those are two great ways to help out a lot in keeping you sane and online when you're in those ransomware problems. All right, well, I'll take one. And it is a pleasure to speak with everybody today. Jane, I'll turn it back over to you.
I would like to thank all of our participants for joining, as well as Jim Lowry and Sydney Diedrich for presenting and answering our questions today. We hope today's presentation has been helpful for you and your organization.